Hi everyone. Yeah, so this is our survey says how to create and set up our own surveys. I'm gonna do a little presentation. I know it sounds pretty boring, but trust me, it'll fly by. It might some of it might sound obvious, but I just wanted to cover everything. I hope it doesn't sound patronizing anyway. Yeah, like Helen says, just if there's any questions asked, I will put some open up questions at the end. But if there's anything you want to ask about something specific, yeah, put your hand up or react, as Helen says, and I'll try to get it. But if we miss it, we'll look at the questions at the end as well. I think there's still people coming in, so I'll give it just one more minute, see if anyone pops through. But yeah, so after the presentation, we will Helen will go on to talk about SurveyMonkey, show some features of that if you haven't used that before. Then I'll show Microsoft Forms, and then we'll do a brief mention of some other ones that are available, but we won't do a full run through of those. And then we'll open up for questions. Yeah, it doesn't seem anyone else coming in now, so I think I'll start. You should be able to see my screen. Let me know if you can't. Okay, so it's just some basic things. So a really good idea for when you're starting a survey is to just define the purpose of that survey. So I identify your goal, clearly understand what you want to achieve, usually like feedback, research, member experience, forum member experience, or things like that. Set specific objectives. So outline the specific insights you want to gather. So I put e.g. understand the forum member experience of X, but that was very specific. But yeah, so it's good to do this and avoid over collection. So ask only the questions necessary to meet your objectives. Um, and then just the type of questions you want to ask. So craft clear and concise questions, avoid jargon and ambiguous language. I know those who do the grant monitoring will notice there is jargon in there, but we navigate that when we do the grant monitoring. Because that's a governmental grant, obviously. So it's best to try and avoid that. Use neutral wording to prevent leading the respondent. So, example, instead of how satisfied you are with our excellent service, say how satisfied are you with our service, so you're not leading them to say it was excellent. Choose the right question type. So we'll go through this when we go through the platform, but just the different platforms. But multiple choice, they're ideal for standardizing answers and simplifying analysis. So you don't get a lot of free text and you're trying to have to study those responses to get some clear data. But the open-ended free text questions are also helpful for rich qualitative data, but require more effort to analyze. Rating scales, so they're handy for feedback or things like that. Rate your experience 1 to 5, and Likert scales. They gauge the levels of agreement or satisfaction. So you've done these before, but strongly agree or strongly disagree or agree. They're good for compiling data at the end. Limit survey length, so keep surveys short and focused to prevent fatigue, and use skip logic or branching. So that's where if someone answers a certain question, they'll be taken to the responses of that, taken to the questions in that follow up that, and so they're only asked the questions depending on what they've responded to, so they don't have to see irrelevant questions. Okay, so there's GDPR compliance. This is important on surveys. You need to understand the GDPR basics, so just how it governs how personal data is collected, stored, and processed in the EU, or Britain or UK. There's an addendum for that, so yeah, it still applies for us. So key principles: lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. So just clearly explain why and how you're collecting the data that you're asking for. Provide a privacy notice linked in the survey. So just be saying that, link to your privacy policy and put some word. I can always, if you have any trouble with wording, you're free to give me an email and I can, have a look at it for you if you're unsure about the privacy notice. Purpose limitation: use data only for the stated purpose. So don't be using, if they do a survey on X, don't be then using it for Y when they didn't agree to it. Data minimization: collect only what is necessary for the survey's purpose. So don't be asking for too much in-depth information if you're not going to use it. And storage limitation: retain data for only long as necessary. So practical steps: get explicit consent, add a consent checkbox with clear wording, e.g. I agree to the collection use of my data for this survey as outlined in the privacy policy. don't have pre-check boxes. They have to actively consent. So yeah, make sure that they have to tick it to agree to the terms. Anonymized data. So where possible, removing identifying information and IP addresses, which a lot of platforms may keep, can be classed as personal data. So make sure you remove those as well when you're anonymizing the data. And allow withdrawal. So inform respondents they can withdraw consent at any time. Secure data. Use platforms with robust security features to collect and store responses. And select the right audience. Target the appropriate demographic or user group and share securely. Use GDPR compliant tools like Microsoft Forms, Google Forms with proper settings, or specialized survey platforms like Qualtrics or Typeform. Although those two I've just mentioned, they're more geared for sales and customer analysis, things like that. So, but some of the features may interest an advanced user if you want to look at those. I haven't used them myself, but I've heard a lot of people do, but big firms. So it's and then set deadlines. Clearly communicate when responses are due. So when you've got your data and your survey's done and the deadline's passed, you want to analyze and act on that data. So you want to clean and validate that data. So remove any incomplete or invalid responses. That's when this is where it's really helpful to, I'll show you this when I do the Microsoft Forms, but for when you want a number of something, make sure that that field is restricted for numbers, so text can't go in. That'll speed things up when you're cleaning up your data. You don't have to remove bits of text and spaces to analyze the numbers and create charts and graphs and dashboards to simplify that analysis. And then apply insights. Use findings to inform decisions, ensuring they align with the survey's original purpose. And then you communicate your findings, share aggregated results with stakeholders or participants, and reiterate your commitment to GDPR by anonymizing personal data and shared insights. So yeah, be careful not to make sure you remove that personal data before publishing any findings. Okay, so just a checklist for the success of a survey. As I said, have a clear purpose for your survey. Design questions that are unbiased, concise, and relevant. Limit personal data collection and secure explicit consent. Test and refine your survey with a pilot group, and use GDPR compliant tools and securely store data, and analyze and act on data responsibly. With the test and refine your survey, I would you can test that either on your employees or your members or steering group first, or you could, if it's a wider survey you're going to do repeatedly, you could do a smaller group pool of forum members just to see how they found the survey. But you don't want to be doing a survey on a survey either, though, do you? And yeah, that's it for that bit. So if you I can't, is there any questions in the chat? No, none at the moment. But I'll move on to, well, Helen can do, we'll move on to SurveyMonkey now, show you the features of that. And then I'll show you Microsoft Forms. And we can talk any questions after that. Okay, thank you.
Hello there, everybody. So my name's Helen Reid. I'm Programme Officer for Contact. I'm one of the people who sends out all the terribly annoying surveys every time you, for example, do an online learning session. As we know, it's really important to get feedback. So it's really important to design as good a survey as you possibly can. So I'm just going to share my screen. Here we go. So what I'm going to go through first is Mentimeter. This is quite a useful tool, and particularly useful when presenting, when using a survey to do live surveys during a presentation. So it's a really useful tool. It's one of these things that you do need to have a play with first. I would always suggest setting up a session either with yourself on a different device or with a team member or colleague, and test this before you do anything live. One of the things that I did want to mention is the cost. Mentimeter is officially it's $143 per year, which, because it's in dollars, is always variable depending on the exchange rate. So as of today, that would be £112.66, which is very exciting. It's a quiz and survey tool. But what I'm going to show you is I'm going to set up a new quiz for you, which you can then take part in. So I'm going to start with, here we go. You just click new quiz. Very intuitive. All of this, as with everything these days, if you get stuck, just Google it. If you get really stuck, please do feel free to message me or the parent participation email account. As with a lot of these tools, you can set up templates. So if you very regularly do surveys as part of a regular presentation or a regular meeting, then you can set up a survey and just use the same one over and over again, just changing key elements. But what we're going to do today is we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to do a very simple multiple choice question. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask, do you prefer cheese? Oh, if I could spell, cheese or chocolate? And what we do then in the next part here is we're going to add option 1 as cheese and option 2 as chocolate. And at the very, very top here, you should be able to see that if it shows here menti.com and code, which is 6694769. If you pop that into a browser, what we'll do is we will show responses. Nobody's responded as yet. Oh, let's have another one, cheesecake. I'm obviously hungry today. So if anybody would like to pop into their browser or on their phone, menti.com, 100% of people so far have chosen chocolate. So really good example of how straightforward this is to share. You can share this in a variety of ways. You can show it as little percentages coming in here, really exciting things. You can see as I just move through these options, just how straightforward this is to use and how effective it could be as part of a presentation. So that's a great one. It isn't something that I have to say I've used an incredible amount, but I can see that we have a question. Lauren, you've raised your hand. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Lovely, thank you so much. Sorry if I've jumped the gun, but where we host meetings online and we have users that use their mobile devices to join via Teams or Zoom, can they use Menti alongside the meeting that they're already in, or will that create a bit of a fluster for them?
No, not at all, no. If you've got, for example, MS Teams or Zoom or something open, all you'd need to do is not minimize the screen, but shrink the screen. So minimize and then set it to the size that you'd like. Open a quick browser and type in menti.com. And it is that straightforward. However, what I have found is that I rarely go to meetings these days where people don't have a phone handy. The only time it could get slightly tricky is if somebody's joined the meeting using their phone and is then trying to do the survey on their phone.
That's what I meant, sorry.
Oh, no, that's quite right. So that all they'd need to do is literally minimize the meeting, enter their response, and then maximize the meeting again. So it shouldn't fluster people too much. I think that's probably all I can say on that question. Any other questions at this point? Please do feel free to unmute yourself. Nope. Okay, we shall move off chocolate and cheesecake then. Okay, there are lots more things that Menti can do. It is, as I say, I'm not the most experienced person when dealing with Menti. And I think the main thing to remember is everything is Googleable. If you get stuck, just pop a question into Google. The more straightforward the question is, the better the answer that you'll get. But I think that's probably just a very, very quick overview for now. So what I'm going to do now is talk about SurveyMonkey, which is something which I'm much more familiar with. First off, we do use this a lot. We have surveys going back. I mean, this is our central account, so this is going back a long time. But very briefly, again, from a pricing point of view, this is slightly more complicated. A basic account is actually free. However, the survey has to be limited to 10 questions or less. There are limitations to the complexity of those questions. And the big thing is you can only collect 25 responses for each of those free surveys. So if you were planning to survey, for example, all of your membership, that wouldn't be any good. However, if you were planning to, for example, only survey your steering group or something along those lines, I'm sure it might manage it. However, I'll show you the full pricing packages, which are horribly exciting and a little bit scary. We personally have a Advantage annual account. So that's, I think it says here, £396 per year. It is that there is a slight advantage to signing up. And if you contact them directly, there is a slight reduction for charitable organisations. When I say slight, I think it might be £10 or £15. It's always worth giving people a call just to see if, you know, if you can literally ramp up what your charity does and what the benefits of it are. I've always found that you can get a teeny bit more of a discount, but these are very large companies that we're talking about, and it is pretty standardized across the board. There are some aspects that the standard annual cost doesn't cover, and you can see here, again, very straightforward. All of this is available on Google. You literally just type in surveymonkey.com, and you can see some of the options are ticked, some of them aren't. The more complex the thing, so for example, phone support is only available if you've got the terribly expensive account, which, as it shows here, is over £1,000 a year. The big thing that I would say is the one seeming disadvantage to having an individual Advantage account is that it is only set up to allow one user. What that means is it only allows, oddly, it actually allows 2 IP addresses to access the account, but it allows any 2 IP addresses to access the account at any one time. So in theory, if there are only 4 or 5 of you using it, you could literally swap. Again, it's definitely based on IP addresses and devices rather than the account itself. So, for example, if you registered the account in your own name using your own email address, alerts would be sent to your own email address saying additional user, choose a user to expel from the account effectively. Personally, what our team do is we have a group mail account which multiple people have access to. So in theory, everybody has access to that. But the way that it's worked out is that we do effectively have one primary administrator, that'll be me. And we have other people who can, one other person at any one time who can pop on and look at what they needed to. So to take you through some absolute basics of SurveyMonkey, again, the easiest thing to do is to set up a template. What I've done here is I've set up an incredibly basic untitled survey, which I'll take you through now. Oh, actually, I'll just take you back for a second, because just to show you, it is as straightforward as click create survey. At the create survey point, you can either, here we go, you can either start from scratch, which is what I'm going to show you now, copy an existing survey, which again, if you use the same type of survey over and over again, even with minor adjustments, setting up, for example, branding and very basic options like that does save time. Or if, for example, if you use the same introduction each time, or if you use any kind of strap line or introduction as to who you are, then reusing the same survey over and over again, or multiple versions of different surveys, is a really quick way of doing it. But if we were starting from scratch, I'll just take you back again, and we'll have a look at this super duper one here. I'm just going to show you in design survey mode. Very exciting. Any questions again, please do just let me know. Here again, it's very intuitive as you go through. You can set up basic branding by either editing the top section of the form, or you can delete various sections. So we're just going to name this, and we're just going to name it demonstration. We're going to save that. It's oddly a little difficult to remember to keep saving everything, so do always look for the save option. What we're going to do here is we're going to do a first question. There's a very straightforward drop down which gives you a little bit of information on each of the types of surveys that you're going to be doing. If at any point you don't understand what's going on, you can go to a basic question bank. You can choose multiple choices, the most straightforward, which would be yes, no. One of the wonders of reusing a very similar survey over and over again, for example, if you were sending a survey out after an event, is it means that the results are comparable. So that's when keeping the same questions over and over again is really, really useful. So we're just going to set up a checkbox option. And we're just going to save that. And once you'd set up all of your questions, for example, you can then preview your survey. Always exciting. And that will show you exactly what it's going to look like when my system has jumped in on itself. Here we go. Very straightforward survey. You can actually test filling it in. So this one is set up so that you can select multiple options for each question. Okay. I'm going to return to the survey editor, and I'm going to add another quick question for you to view. Just while I'm faffing about, any questions so far? Nope. Oh, I can see we've got a number of questions in chat, or a number of comments, certainly. Bear with me. Just to confirm, you will be getting the slides that Ben used after the session. I'll include the links to the sites that I've shown you today. But again, I'd say the most important tool when looking at anything along these lines is Google. I'll just do another demonstration question if the system will let me. Here we go. Fantastic. So one of the things I'm going to do now is show you a drop-down set of options. With the vast majority of the questions, one of the things that you can do, which is quite useful, is add an other or comments option. So you just tick a little box. You can either label your own comments or query box, and people can add another selection. So one of the things that you can do is display it actually as a comments field or as an answer choice. So in theory, so you could now choose cheese, chocolate cake, or other. So I'm going to choose as an answer. I want to save that question. And just to show you again what that looks like in the preview option. Okay, so we've got the demo question, which you can choose more than one option for. On the food preferences question, so question 2 that I've just set up, you can only choose one of these options. Again, there are further options when it comes to setting up the survey initially. So one of the things that you can do is you can set up, and I've completely forgotten what it's called. You can set up, I'm going to do complete mind blank because my screen's not working. Okay, the logic of a question. Within the logic, you can, for example, so if, for example, if you were using a matrix scale, which was, for example, if you were asking how much do you, apologies for being so terribly basic. How much do you like fruit? How much do you like cake? You can then choose options within that choice of lots, not a lot, not at all, lots, not a lot, not at all. So that'll be a matrix scale. I won't go through all of the different question types because I have always found that personally, I think it's much, much easier to actually try these things out, to have a play. Don't be scared. You can't break it. I promise you that. If it could possibly be broken, I would have broken it by now. So that's the absolute basics. Okay, so as far as trying to generate responses to surveys via SurveyMonkey concerned, one of the very basic things that you can do under the collect responses option is you can share it via a variety of means. So personally, within our team, we email our surveys out. So we send the surveys in the way that we want to send them, which generates a link, which I can then send out via email or via social media. You can also buy responses, which again wouldn't be for somebody, I'm assuming like forums who have got a targeted audience or a known audience. But I'll just show you the other possible options. You can send via email within the system, which is a little bit more complicated because it will automatically open an app-based email account. You can send them via text. Personally, I've never tried this one because I'm pretty sure that you'd have to, like it says here, upload a contact list to the system, and I mean, I'm assuming also include phone numbers. You can embed it on a website if you'd like it to do that directly. But personally, I like to share a survey link. And this is where you've got some options to try and customize. So you can change the ending of your survey link. So we could call this demonstration. it doesn't like gaps, the little box will automatically go red. If it doesn't like your response. Similarly, if the exact tag is being used by somebody else, you also can't use it, because obviously you get crossovers in surveys, and that's anybody else worldwide from what I can gather. So other options to include at this point, some of which are really important. Multiple responses is automatically turned off, but that would be an option where somebody can complete multiple surveys from the same device. You might think, when would I ever need people to create more than one survey response? You never know. If you've got one, for example, administrator who is submitting multiple surveys on behalf of other people, you may wish to turn that on. You certainly wouldn't want people to, you can also allow people to edit responses until they hit complete. So where you can open SurveyMonkey, you could start the survey, go away, come back, reopen it, and continue editing. But the really important one that I wanted to show you was making a response anonymous. What this means is that the IP address won't automatically be collected. That is really important from a GDPR point of view, and Ben will go on to GDPR shortly. Just talking about that anonymity, a survey doesn't automatically collect somebody's name. It will automatically, no, it won't actually. If you turn it on to anonymous, it won't collect any details of the individual. So it won't collect any email address, it won't collect name, IP address, or anything along those lines. What we've found, again from experience, is that people don't really like to complete non-anonymous surveys. So you could ask somebody their name and make it a non-compulsory question. I will just show you where the compulsory option is, because I should have shown you that first time around. So again, I'm going to go back into the design survey. Apologies for jumping backwards and forwards, but this does hopefully show you how easy SurveyMonkey is to navigate. Apologies that my system is a little slow. That's because I'm presenting today. So what you can do under the option is require an answer to that question. And at this point, you could, for example, under this type of question, you could choose how many the minimum number of responses that somebody can give. If you were to save that option, looking at it in the design portion of the tool, you'll see that a little star has appeared next to it. That's just to remind you that the question is compulsory. But one of the things I was going to go on to say is that rather than make it compulsory that somebody submit their name and address, or name and email address, what you might want to do is at the end of the survey, put something along the lines of, if you would like to further feedback on this survey, please leave your email address in the box below, or something along those lines. If you do ask for somebody's name and contact details, do point out if it's compulsory or not. If it's not compulsory, do please say, otherwise, again, it may put people off slightly. Okay, so I've been talking for quite some time. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Helen. I just wanted to ask a question. It's Ben.
Yeah.
You know, the IP address, hide the IP address option.
Yep.
Does that have to have a paid account for that?
Do you know? I don't know. I think probably the quickest thing to do would be to Google it. Do you happen to know, Ben?
I don't know. No,
No.
I just wanted to check.
I'd say Google it.
Yeah.
My automatic response would be yes.
Yeah.
That is an option, purely because even to have a free account, you do need to register. So you will actually have an account,
Okay.
and you will have very basic reporting. That's one thing I haven't actually touched on. And it's very straightforward. You can very quickly go to analyze results. We've got no response at the moment, so obviously it's not going to show an awful lot. But it shows you question summaries. You can view the summaries as a whole. Unfortunately, I'm slightly adverse to showing you our past surveys because you'll see quite a lot of information that I don't think you need to at this stage. And obviously responses to surveys that we've popped out. But you'll be able to see a summary analysis of all responses received in the form of a graph. What you can also do is you can download or export files. You can export individual survey responses, or you can export all of them in an Excel format, which you then can manipulate and interpret as you wish to. So going back to any questions? No?
No, that was great, Helen. Thank you.
Okay.
I think great that Helen showed for the questions in the thing that you can hide the IP address on SurveyMonkey. So if you want to do a truly anonymous survey and not have to put the consent box in and everything, then that's great. Yeah, you can do that. Okay, I can move on to yeah. So I don't think Microsoft Forms they on the anonymous one they won't do it either. So it's just if you do an internal one with your colleagues, it will log that which user at some administrative level or other they'll know, you could find out what user did what MS Forms, but that's just something to consider when you're doing it, if you're doing an internal survey. Anyway, I'll move on to Microsoft Forms now. Can everyone see my screen? I'm not just checking it's working.
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks, Helen. Okay, so yeah, I've just made a mock-up of a survey. So this is where if Microsoft Forms, it will be part of Microsoft 365. So if you've got that, you'll have it. You won't. I don't think you can get it without having Microsoft 365. I could be wrong on that, but that's the only way I've ever accessed it. So it's limited in some ways, but it's got much more features than it used to Microsoft Forms. So it's becoming a really good alternative to SurveyMonkey, especially if it's part of your package of Microsoft 365. This is what the page looks like, landing page for forms. So you can start a new form. There's a quick import option, which I've not used myself, but you can kind of like mock up a form on Microsoft Word or PDF. There's some import guidance there, so you can tells you what type of question choices and open text and the format of it. But yeah, you can, if you've already got a list of questions, you might be able to import those as well to save a bit of time. So I'm going to go into this form I've opened, which is hilariously called a survey about fish. Yeah, so I've just wanted to demonstrate the different types of questions are. There's a multiple choice. You just double click on them to the settings for each one. So, and you can make sure that some questions are required or multiple answers. There's some more options here as well to give it a subtitle. And then if you want to insert a different type of question, this is what it'll look like. You've got your choices, your radio button choice there, text, rating, Likert scale, like I mentioned before, for strongly, disagree, agree, or whatever spectrum of responses you want to put. Date and ranking, things like that. It's good to have section your form, like I said earlier, so you can reduce fatigue and break up the form so they can navigate through pages. I'll just demonstrate the branching as well, which is really handy if you've got sections of the form that won't apply to some users, and you'll work out who those users are by a drop down or something. So, for example, on this one here, I'll just preview the form quickly. So if I click once a week, the form continues as normally, or 4 times a week I do so. But when you click on 5 times a week, it says you eat fish more than 5 times a week. Please explain yourself. So that's really handy on certain questions. So I'd that definitely reduces fatigue as well for users if like a lot of the form won't apply to them, but you all want to ask questions to the ones that's replied yes to a certain question. It's really handy to do branching. So I'll just add another branch to show you how I did it. So add branching, and this is the branching options for every question on the form. So let's say someone said, I mean, it's not going to link directly because it'll take me too long to say, but this, if I click on 4 times a week, I can make them go to another question, question 4. And then so when I click 4 times a week, it takes me to tell us a story about an interaction with a haddock. So, yeah, if you need any help with that, I'm happy, you know, you need to send an email to me about how you set that up on a form a bit more complex than what I put here, then I'm happy to answer those questions. And then so, like I said in my presentation, drop down is best for restricting the answers to help with analytics and reporting, and free text for more qualitative data. It's good you can put restrictions in as well. So restrictions. So if I want something where obviously I put that as a free text, but so you can limit what text is put into is put into the answer, or you can do the same with numbers. So either it's a number, so that helps you make sure you've got your data is validated and reduces the need to clean the data when you analyze it, or you can make sure that it's greater than a certain number, especially if that'll be applied to more to quizzes. If you're going to do a quiz, and quizzes may sound a bit like what would you call it, facile, but you could even make a train, for your own steering group or something. You can make some training, and there's even an option on here to set a time duration. So you could give some training to people on your steering group or whoever, or even forums. You can put required questions, like I said, restrictions, done that. Branching, we've mentioned on that. So then we can move on to the settings. Once you've set up all your questions in the way you want them, settings, you can make this anonymous, or only people. So this is internal for only people in contact. That's us. But obviously your 365 will also show different things. The save responses is not great on Microsoft Forms, and it's done by a link, I believe. So that kind of way of saving can mean you lose a bit of data sometimes. So I wouldn't do it on longer forms. And then you can customize your thank you message, and you can add response receipts after they've been notifications when they've been sent. Okay, if you look at the response, so we can look at the responses now. So, but this is the preview as well, preview option, so you can see how your form's doing, so you can test it before you release it. But then collect responses. This is where you share your forms. You can either copy the link there and put it in an email. You can shorten the URL as well, to make it a bit more readable for users. You can choose who it goes to. Anyone can respond, only specific people in your organization, and you can also send it via here. Put in the people you want it to be sent to, with a little message. But yeah, and then view responses is where you can start to analyze your data. It gives you some quick responses, some analytics of how it's going, but you can also export all the individual results, and you can do your own analysis of that in Excel. So yeah, like I said, the Microsoft Forms save function isn't great, so keep your survey short to ensure there isn't data loss, which can be infuriating, particularly when it comes to qualitative data with the long text. Add a file attachment. They're only available for the non-public forms. So if you wanted people to upload anything, that wouldn't work on Microsoft Forms unless it was an organizational form for your organization users only. The Microsoft Forms doesn't have notifications for the forms built in. So if you want, you can have receipts and things like that, but it's like if you want more in-depth notifications, you could get those done with something in combination with something called Power Automate, which is part of Office 365. But that can be a higher cost if it's not on your package. and it's quite complicated, but like I use it myself. So if anyone has a real need for it, I'd be happy to. And you've got Power Automate. Again, I can do a quick demonstration of that one day if that's something you'd be interested in. But it is fiddly, and it really, if it would have to be, I would recommend it for a survey you want to keep for a long time, because the tweaking it needs might not be worth it for that small amount of automation at the time invested to putting it into place. We looked at Menti, so I suppose, is there any questions about Microsoft Forms before I put it out to other questions? Is there any specific questions about Microsoft Form?
And so there's one question, which is about past experience of MS Forms is great, but one failing for surveys where we do collect personal data outside of our organisation is that it won't send emails to confirm completion. The only way to provide an acknowledgement is for respondents is via a message at the end. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, that's how I found it. Like I said, there is an option with Power Automate to link up sending an email to that form. Is if you'd like to send me an email about doing that, just check if you've got that Power Automate function, and how often you use that survey. We could probably have a little talk and see if we could get that input in place for you. Yeah, there is a thank you for completing section for the form. Who asked that? Sorry, I don't want to be rude. Lauren, was it? So yeah, let's have a look. I think it's under settings. So customize thank you message, and then you can add a customized message there, but like it's not very detailed or complex. A specific tailored response that you'd want is probably not ideal for that, but it might still just be enough for lots of you. Yeah, so if you're interested in anything I've said that might want to take out of the meeting, just do drop me an email. It's if you haven't got it, it's ben.bennett@contact.org.uk. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any queries or suggestions about how to tailor it for you. Yeah, so I think that's it really. I just wanted to add something about GDPR. I'm sure a lot of you will already know this, but I just wanted, it's best to go through it. I've got some notes somewhere I wanted to refer to. Yeah, I just wanted to say be careful about asking sensitive information, particularly identifiable information about a child, health conditions, or ethnicity data. Just be sure that the platform you're using is secure enough to be asking that information. Does it meet data standards? Is it encrypted? Is two-factor authentication enabled? And will you store the data safely once exported from the platform? If any doubt about these, I would either reconsider asking such questions, as it's high risk, particularly if IP addresses are stored. But again, it's just like things like free text, they might be able to put personal information in which you didn't even consider them putting it in. So just be careful with that. And then also data stored outside the EU or the UK. So if you're using a platform such as SurveyMonkey, that will probably store data. A lot of these platforms will store data outside the EU, UK, and you just need to check regularly. Not too regularly, like I'm not saying every day, but just check that the data they stored is stored in accordance with what is called, this is very complicated with this stuff, but it's called the Data Privacy Framework now, and that was part of a law change that someone queried the law of GDPR, and they wanted to be sure that the place like the US stores it in the place that is in accordance with GDPR. They've got this new thing called the Data Privacy Framework, which means that if someone is part of that, they're happy that they do store it in accordance with GDPR. SurveyMonkey is currently part of that framework, and so is Microsoft Forms. So if you use that, you should be fine for a while. But it's best to, if you've got an organizational like GDPR policy or data protection policy, when that's reviewed, it's best to review that the platforms you use just to make sure that's still being used in accordance with GDPR. I know that's complicated, and if you have any worries or queries about that, I'm happy to answer them as well. But if there's no further questions, I think that's it. But I hope we've covered everything, and if we've missed anything, let us know. and we can ask it. Oh, how Lauren? Yeah. So if you do an anonymous form, from how I understand it, they do not store IP addresses. But yeah, okay. I think that's it then. Thanks for staying through what I'm sure was a riveting presentation. But thanks, Helen. That was really helpful for SurveyMonkey and Menti. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much for joining us, everybody. I've just popped a link into the chat, which is a survey about today's online learning session. I will also circulate this for to those who've joined us via email as well. If you could complete it, you all know how valuable feedback is. Thank you. Anything else to add, Ben?
I don't think so. No. Yeah. I'm happy to answer emails, as I said. So yeah, drop them to me. Okay.
Fantastic.
Bye, everyone.